People commonly cite GDP and the G3 unemployment rate as two of the most important indicators of economic growth and prosperity in the United States. The problem is that GDP does not measure the well-being of a country's population. If your house burns down in a natural disaster, and the city has to contract workers to clear the area, GDP goes up. GDP is a measure of sheer economic activity, good or bad. Since 1997, we have lost at least $20 trillion a year globally in non-marketed ecosystem services. This figure is larger than the GDP of the United States. Likewise, the depletion of social capital caused by rising inequality needs to be counted against any gains in GDP. If you were to look at the G3 unemployment rate today, you would see unemployment at an all-time low, around 3.9%. The problem is that the unemployment rate is a fraction of a fraction, and is defined as how many people in the labor force have reported looking for a job. It does not consider people who drop out of the workforce for any reason, including disability or simply giving up trying to find a job. The unemployment rate also doesn't take into account people who are underemployed. That is, if a college graduate takes a job as a barista, or other role that does not require a degree. It does not consider people who drop out of the workforce for any reason, including disability or simply giving up trying to find a job. The New York Federal Reserve recently measured the underemployment rate of recent college graduates and came up with 44%. The U.S. labor force participation rate is now at only 62.9%, a rate below that of nearly all other industrialized economies and about the same as that of El Salvador and the Ukraine. The proportion of Americans who are no longer in the workforce and have stopped looking for work is at a multi-decade high. There are presently a record 95 million working-age Americans, a full 37% of adults, who are out of the workforce. In 2000, there were only 17 million. The change can be explained in part by demographics' higher numbers of students and retirees, but there are still 5 million Americans out of the workforce who would like a job right now that aren't considered in the unemployment rate. The number of working-age Americans who aren't in the workforce has surged to a record 95 million. More than half of American households already rely on the government for direct income in some form. 20% of working-age adults are now on disability, with increasing numbers citing mood disorders. When entrepreneurs start companies and expand, they generally aren't hiring a down on his or her luck worker in need of a break. They are hiring the strongest contributors with the right mix of qualities to help an early-stage company succeed. There is really only one entity, the federal government, that can realistically reform its society in ways that will prevent large swaths of the country from becoming jobless zones of derelict buildings and broken people.